Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Pettitt. I'm the Director of Youth Ministries for Awana. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and answer some questions for you. We try and do this on a Hangout on a regular basis. We know that as you go along and you start working with all the different facets and resources in Awana Youth Ministry, that sometimes you come across stuff that you're not too sure about. And here's the one thing I want to encourage. I want to encourage you not only to ask questions of us, but ask questions of your pastor. Encourage you to ask questions of your students. One of the ways that we get better is that we consistently ask questions of people so that they can see that we're learning. The best way to teach your students that they need to continue learning, that they need to continue growing, is that they will be able to understand that you have modeled that for them. Part of the key is at times that we don't always think, well, I need to keep learning myself. You need to keep growing so that they know that it's important that they keep growing. Even when they get older, they'll see that you as a leader modeled, hey, you know what, I kept learning. I kept reading new books and asking better questions and pushing people to help me get better. So we want to make sure that we answer your questions in ways that are helpful to you so that you can improve as leaders. Jonathan, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions, and if you're watching live, you can ask questions on the Q&A section, and we'll take those if they come in. Okay? First question is, do Journey students read the New Testament a second time during their 4 years in Journey, or will they the Bible reading be changed for Journey students? So I think that's a question of how the new track impacts Journey students and their Bible reading.
Yeah, so the Bible reading that's changing from Trek won't change until next year. All the students who came out of Trek last year came in with the expectation that they would be doing the reading and the summaries as they have done in the past. They will continue doing that all as they go forward. So please don't make any changes. It's not that big a deal. They will only read it one time through in their high school when they work through the Journey stuff. Now, next year, when it changes, you'll have some groups that are doing things differently. So the freshmen this year will probably continue all the way through just to do the reading and the summaries. The students coming in will be doing the readings, the summaries, and the verses just for the Old Testament because they will have already started probably the New Testament stuff. The goal at the end of the day is to get all of the New Testament reading done, but they're only reading it through one time. They're not going to read it through 4 or 5 times. They don't have to say the summaries twice. The goal is to finish reading the entire Bible and say the summaries. And then in the future, as we get going with New Trek and as the New Trek stuff kind of moves up and progresses, they'll have finished the New Testament, the readings, and the verses in Trek. So they'll do the New Testament, the readings, and the verses for the Old Testament readings, the summaries, and the verses in Journey. The goal is that they spread that Bible out over both their middle school and high school experience, so that they've read the whole thing through deeply, slowly, digging in, working through the summaries. What does this mean, and what do I do with it over a longer period of time? So they're not trying to hustle through it and just get it done.
Great. Is there a pacing guide for the 32 weeks of Trek? And if not, any recommendations on how to do that?
A pacing guide for the lessons or a pacing guide for the reading?
The question doesn't specify.
All right, well, let's answer it both ways then. If you're talking about the Bible reading, we did put in there the list of books in the back. There's a 2-year plan and a 3-year plan in the back of the Trek books to get through the New Testament reading in that period of time. They are each one of the books just there. Now, if they want to break them up, realize that obviously Matthew is longer than, say, 1 John. So we didn't specify the number of chapters that they need to read on a weekly basis to get finished. However, I think basically what you're going to find is that students are going to kind of move through that probably in the order that we put it in there, and they're going to figure out real fast, like, okay, I can't do 10 chapters at a time. I'm fairly certain when we worked out the total number of chapters that if they read a couple of chapters a day, a couple of chapters a week, that they would get through it in that period of time, but we did not specify that. If you're talking about the Trek lessons themselves, you're obviously only working on 1 lesson a week, so you can actually plan out, and we did the math, if you start the first week of September and go through the last week of April, you will have enough time to finish it with a 2-week break at Christmas. You can actually plan that out, so you can scope and sequence it, so you can say, okay, Trek 2-1 will be on this day. Trek 2-2 will be on this day. So that you can work around things like, hey, you know what, we're going to have a Christmas party. Hey, you know what, we meet on Sunday and the Super Bowl's here. You can figure out exactly when you're going to do it and use those the reviews, the 8th-week reviews that work like an Oasis used to kind of increase or decrease. That's what I'm having to do with the Trek group that I'm actually getting started this week, is I'm basically having to figure out which reviews am I going to do and how am I going to plan this out over the year, knowing that they do meet on Sunday, so I'm probably going to have to hit that period of time. But they also go longer. They go into the middle of May. So I have a few extra weeks to work on that, knowing that my Christmas break will be longer, that I'll get canceled for Easter, that I'll get canceled for Super Bowl, just kind of making those tweaks. But if you do it that way, you do one lesson a week, you'll have a good pace throughout the rest of the year.
Cool. Another question I have is related to Trek. The differences between the Bible study books and the essential books. If you could explain what those real differences are, the benefits between the two, and I guess really when you should and shouldn't use one or the other.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I've gotten that question several times, and I think it's easiest to understand that your students actually are at different levels in their faith, understanding that they have different levels of spiritual maturity, and that's probably fairly easy to see. And I want to be careful that we guard here that spiritual maturity isn't defined simply by Bible knowledge. There are times where people have a tremendous level of Bible knowledge, but they don't actually live it out, which would make them Pharisees. I've also seen students who had a tremendously low level of Bible knowledge, but they were extremely loving and caring. So you could say, look, these students need more resources, need more scripture, need more of God's Word in their life, but they already get the concepts that they're supposed to be living this stuff out and loving their neighbor and serving God with it to the people around them. So I want to make sure we caution that, but when we talk about spiritual maturity, that we kind of nuance that a little bit, that there needs to be a balance there between Bible knowledge and lived out faith. The Trek Bible studies were actually written for Trek students, and Trek students have a tendency, if they've come up through Awana, to be advanced. So we don't think of them that way all the time, but that's the truth. They've memorized hundreds of verses of Scripture, over 400 actually, if they've gotten through this far. They're not a normal kid. They're ready to dig in. They're ready to go deeper. And those daily devotions will allow them to do that. They want to dig into their faith. This is the space to do that. It does have all of the components, space for them to write and do the introductory activities. It's got a little bit deeper lesson content. It's got the memory verse with also some commentary on it so they understand what it's there for. It has 7 days of devotion so that they're digging in smaller chunks of Scripture so that they actually understand what it means. And then it also asks questions, a lot more questions, about how they're going to live this out. The Trek Bible study was made for students who, youth pastors would call them core kids. They are the kids who come in and look, these kids are going to be my leaders. These kids are going to be the best kids in my group. They are ready to grow. They are ready to go deep. But that's not every kid. Some kids are just at a place right now where they're trying to work through, what do I believe? And I'm not even sure about this thing. I never went to Sunday school. I didn't grow up in Awana. I'm young in my faith. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And I'm curious. I'm still trying to work through it. I'm still trying to ask questions. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know what I don't even know. How do I get up to speed? How do I know what I'm supposed to know? So we wrote the Trek Essentials to be shorter. Instead of 8 pages for a Bible study in Trek Bible studies, it's shorter. It's 2 pages. But it's the same content. So it still has the same introductory activity, just no space to work on it. Just something that they're going to think about, an exercise for them to think about now instead of a space for them to work. It still has the key verse, which they can memorize or not memorize. That's their choice. It has the simplified section of content. It still has the same key thought. This is the thesis statement of the lesson, so they'll know what they're talking about, and the same key words, so they'll have some sense of that. But it only has 2 questions, and the 2 questions are usually very practical. They're pulled from the devotions throughout the week, so those students can actually engage in a small group conversation. But the reality is, there are a lot less to do here. Now, the Trek Essentials can be used for students who are new to the faith, young in the faith, but that's really going to come down to you knowing your students. How well do they know the Scriptures? How much do they need? We've conceived of these as on-ramps. For a lot of students, this is, I got this, I get the basic concepts, now I want to go deeper, I'm going to dive into a Bible study. However, we also know that there's some students with learning disabilities, special needs. We know that there's students who can't afford it. I mean, there's lots of different reasons why people are going to wind up using these Trek Essentials. We know that there are students who are going to use them because this is all the time they have. They want to do something about their faith, but they are just so slammed, so busy, so whatever, that they wouldn't even show up at your group because they basically feel embarrassed that they couldn't finish a Bible study, and we've seen this in different groups. But they have time to finish the essentials and feel like they can still participate in the group, they'll continue coming. The key for me is that this is the space where they're going to start asking some of those hard questions, and whether that's with a Bible study and they're going deep, or in essentials and they're basically just learning the essence, the basics of it, we want to keep them engaged in their faith, talking about their faith and growing in it, which gives us the opportunity then to move them to a Bible study, to move them to something deeper. The moment we shut down the conversation, well, you're not going to do a Bible study, then you can't come. So what now? You've just lost them. That conversation can't continue. You don't know what's going to happen with their spiritual growth because you've basically left them out. This is an opportunity to include them in a way that they can manage at the moment so that you can help them grow into a Bible study as they go along.
I think that answers that. A journey question now.
Yep.
We haven't talked about journey too much. Does the journey curriculum have discussion questions available for each lesson? They noticed leader guides didn't have the discussion questions for small groups. Do you make your own questions or use some of the review questions? What's your advice on how to navigate that?
Yeah, and that's really the struggle that we've been having with Journey for a while, is that you have, in some of the studies, you have discussion questions. I believe God Cut Glasses has quite a few more discussion questions because that's been more recently updated, but some of the ones that haven't been updated in a little while are just review questions. What's the answer to this? What's this? It's going to require the leader to do a lot more. Now, the leader guide has some questions for discussion in there, but it's still going to require you to do a lot more than it does in Trek, and we're aware of that. So as we move forward, we're talking about how we're going to rebuild Journey, and Journey will be, and somebody just asked me this the other day, what's Journey going to look like and when you rebuild it? And I said, well, first of all, there's only two things that we've decided, so let's be clear. One, we've decided that we will keep the current Journey, so no matter what we do next, you'll still be able to get the books. If you love those books and want to keep using those books, they're still going to be there. We will keep them around as long as people want them. But the only other thing we've really decided about Journey in the future is that it will only be 4 books. It's just more cost-effective both for you and for us to basically only print 4 books instead of 10 books. So it'll be 1 a year, and we'll rotate them just like we have a Trek. But one of the things that we are wrestling with, and we haven't made any decisions on, but we are wrestling with and heading in that direction, is that Journey will need more discussion-type questions, more devotional-type stuff like we've done in Trek. It won't look exactly like Trek, so don't think you're just going to basically get a Trek version of Journey. It'll be different. It's going to have some different things to it, and we're still wrestling with and discussing what that looks like, and want to hear feedback from you. What are the things that you guys want? We have some ideas, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we build things that work for you with what you're doing. However, that's one of the biggest complaints that was just mentioned here a second ago in that question is we need more discussion stuff. We need our leader guides to have more discussion elements. We need our student guides to have more discussion elements. And the current ones don't have that. We are keenly aware of that deficiency. When I worked and ran a Journey group a year ago, I had to go through the book and basically make my own questions. I had to talk through and think through, okay, what am I going to ask my students here? And sometimes I could use the review questions. Sometimes that really helped. Sometimes I had to take the lesson content from the leader guide and pull some stuff out of there. But it was a lot more work, and I am keenly aware that that's present because I've had to do it myself. So I feel for that at the moment. However, in the future, that's one of the things that has to be fixed about Journey. It has to involve ways to facilitate better small group discussions, and we're working on what that'll look like.
I have some questions regarding C-Track. And I guess first, if you could explain C-Track for those who don't know what that is, and then just explain how the new Trek 1 works for those in C-Track.
Okay, so C-Track essentially is a a program that we started to help churches who literally knew that they had one or two Trek student or Journey students that wanted to keep going, but didn't have a group, didn't have another or enough students to foster a group, to foster a small group, to foster those kind of things. But these students wanted to continue on in their studies, and most of them to get a citation award. That's why it's called C-Track. It's a citation track. They wanted to get that citation award, so they wanted to continue on, even if it meant they were the only one doing it. So it was not intended that you would run C-Track for a group of students. It's not meant that if you got 5 students that you basically let each one of them show up, you look at their verses, you hear that, you read through the material, you ask them a couple questions, and you leave. If you've got more than 3 students, start a group. Put them together. Let them discuss what they're working on. We think that's an extremely important aspect of growing as a Christian, is that you're in community and that you're asking questions not only of people who lead you, but also people around you who can help express it in different ways, that you can see exactly what you're missing, because you need other people to know what you're missing, and you can also see different ways that people have processed it, different things people are struggling with. It gives you a broader perspective of the ways that Christians come at things and engage with things. It also gives the leader the opportunity to talk about things that maybe you missed, maybe you didn't understand. So C-Track wasn't intended for more than 1 or 2 kids. It was intended for 1 to 2 students. And the way it basically works, and it works a little bit different in different places, but the way it basically works is that a student who wants to continue will continue toward pursuing a citation or a meritorious award. Will basically do a Trek book, and they'll work through all of the work, and then they'll meet with a leader. Generally, we encourage it to be a pastor, because we love that pastors take the time to listen to the students who are basically saying verses and talk through with them what they believe. If you don't have a community of students, at least having a pastor to challenge and help the student grow. It also encourages the pastor to think through, how am I going to do this with my other students, and getting the pastor to think through, what does student ministry look like, what does youth ministry look like in our church. So they would basically go and say it to a leader. They'll say their verses, make sure their work's checked off as an individual once a week. That's basically the way it's set up and structured, and then that person will sign off for them. When it's finished, the church will then submit it just like they would if it were a normal group. They'll basically submit it and say, this person earned this award. They can order the award form and send it to them, but there is no community to it. So it's basically like, here's how you do it with 1 or 2 students on their own. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Do you have any? Is there like a follow-up? I want to make sure I get it.
Yeah, if you ask that question and you have more another follow-up question to that, let us know. Related to that, we have somebody who has a student who would be on their own doing the C-Track. That's their sophomore year in high school. Where do they start? The last time they did anything was TNT.
Which TNT book?
I do not know.
Okay, so let's assume let's run through 2 possibilities. To finish a citation, you have to complete 10 years of work. So let's assume first that they quit before they started TNT. Then what would be required if you're a sophomore in high school is that the way that I would do it is I would start with a journey book, something they could do right now. And then over the next 3 years, if they really want a citation, they're going to have to go back and do every single one of the TNT books and Trek books that they missed. Now, what that means is you can do 3 years of TNT and 3 years of Trek, or 4 years of TNT and 2 years of Trek, for a total of 6. Either way, you can do 3 and 3 or 4 and 2. You got to do 6 between TNT and Trek. They're going to have to go back and do those books, and that's not uncommon. There are people who've done that quite a bit, where they got to freshman or sophomore and went, shoot, I wanted this award, let me just go back and do the books. However, they need to do the journey books now to keep up, because they're going to have to do all the Bible reading and all the summaries. So start with them on the journey books, which are basically designed for where they're at right now, and then let them go back and work through, okay, I can do 2 or 3 extra sections a week from this TNT book. I can do 2 or 3 extra sections a week from this Trek book. That's going to be a lot of work, but if that's something they want to do, and I know there are students who are motivated to do it, that's a fantastic thing to be pursuing that citation award. The key is if they finish any of those T&T books, every single one of the T&T books they finished, let's say on a second idea, they finished all of T&T. They went all the way through the 4th year, so they've done 4 years of T&T. Then all they're really going to have to go back and do is do 2 years of Trek and then catch up to whatever they're doing in Journey, which totals out to be 8 books in 4 years because they're only 12 lessons each. So in Journey, you do 2 books a year, so you have to do 8 books total, and you should be able to finish that no problem if they finished all of T&T. If they've only finished 2 years, then again, you're still going to have to finish those last 4 years, whether that's 1 year of T&T and 3 years of Trek, or 2 years of T&T and 2 years of Trek. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, I just wanted to be clear. I mean, the goal is, and there is a citation matrix that we have online. If you go to the Awana.org webpage and look for citation matrix, I actually think it might be on AwanaYM.org as well. You can look for, under C-Trek, you can look for the citation matrix. That citation matrix will actually lay out exactly all the stuff you have to do to get a citation. We are updating it because we need to add the Bring a Friend component like we've talked about in the past to the Trek section, but other than that, all the stuff on that C-Trek thing is up to date. So that's probably the best way to do it, is to look through that sheet and know here's what we've already done, here's what we have left to do. Yeah, that's probably the best place that I could send you at the moment.
Well, I'd be sure to add a link to that down below. I have a question from Ethan. Are they supposed to print off the Bible summaries for each student?
You mean for Trek, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah, Trek.
Okay.
Oh, I guess, well, and Bible reading, I guess, for Journey, but it's probably Trek.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say you'd have to print them off. You can if you want. They need a copy, but I would challenge to say those are PDFs, that PDF file and Adobe file. Those Adobe PDF files can be opened pretty much on any device on the planet. So they can open them on a computer, they can open them on their phone, they can open them on a tablet, they can open them on pretty much anything. I would consider the possibility that you might want to save your paper and just email it to all of them, and then they can open it on whatever device they choose and let them print it for themselves if that's what they want to do. It doesn't need to be something that you print off 50 copies and have to pay for all the copies for it and then hand it out. I would personally just send it to their device, and if they wanted to open it on a computer and print it out themselves to have a hard copy, that's probably a better way to do it, to let them decide if that's something worthwhile to them.
But each student should have a copy.
Yeah, because they're going to have to remember, they're going to have to work through the summary, and even though right now the Journey students aren't memorizing the verses, the Trek students are going to have to memorize the verses. Those are in the summaries. So the summary and the verse need to be read through and worked through themselves. I wouldn't hold a central copy and then basically read it to them. They're not going to be able to process it and work through it and remember it. Those summaries, they're going to say in their own words. They can memorize it, but I find in general that if you have them say it in their own words, they wind up saying more than if you just had them memorize the summary. Let them say it in their own words. They add things that you're just like, wow, where'd you get that? Well, I read through the book, and this is what I saw. I saw this theme pop up over and over again. So, but the key verses are all in, for each one of those books is in the summary, the Bible summary. So yes, they do need their own copy. Whether that's a digital copy or a hard print copy, that's up to him.
Yeah, I think that answers that. Well, I think that's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's just close with some encouragement. I know there's a lot of groups getting started. I'm actually going to start a group this week for some students at our church, and I'm really excited. But I also know that there's a lot of planning and a lot of energy that goes into that. And so I just want to encourage you to remember that in spite of all the fact that this is a lot of work, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of things that are going on. The thing I constantly remind myself is this needs to be fun. This needs to be engaging, especially for your students. Because if they show up and they're bored and you're going, but I did a lot of work, it won't matter. At some point they're going to look at you and be like, why are we here? You just basically put a plan together that made us not want to be here. You've been to places that were boring to you, that you didn't want to be. Would you keep going back? Would you say that fostered your growth? Now, am I saying it's always going to be easy? No. But I am saying it's worth it. One of the core principles of Awana that we emphasize over and over and over again is that Awana is meant to be fun and engaging. It is there to engage the students, to draw them in, to get them with you. So not only are they having a good time, but they're beginning to use their hearts and minds to grasp and understand and wrestle with the Word of God. And I am reminding myself even this week, so maybe this is more for me than for you, but remember, let them have a good time. Let them engage with this, because they deep down want to know who God is, who they are. And that's what this new Trek 1 book's going to do. Make sure that as you move forward, as you plan, and in all the details and all the work that you're doing, you're having a good time. They're having a good time. This is learning about the love of God, how deeply, truly, and passionately He longs to be with us. And unless we begin to communicate that effectively, they will think that the love of God, that the gospel, that the good news is just something old hat that they've already heard and it's done and over with. This is the most amazing story, the most amazing news that ever happened in the world, that God, who loved us so deeply, sent His only Son to show us that love while we were still sinners, to rescue us from our sin and to restore us in our relationship with Him so that we can spend eternity in His presence, eternity with one another in heaven, living happily ever after. That's a great story. Why are we not having more fun with it? Let's make sure we communicate that in ways that are both fun and engaging with our students as we get started this year. God bless. Have a great day.